weg en dan zijn ze wat minder hoorbaar.
Maar dit is links, hè?
Ja, dat is goed.
I will try not
maybe,
to.
Yeah, and maybe you can just drop it inside your shirt.
Yeah.
And then the cord is away. There you go.
Okay, thanks. I just would like to tweet the URL of the YouTube feed because I think it will change since we cut the feed. So there will probably be a new URL. And since we have time, I thought we could do this.
How can I find it?
I don't know. The other one, I found it on the 4 digits Twitter. But the new one may not be here yet. No, it's...
Ja, meneer Kees?
Ja, deze is aan.
Oh, dan doe ik nog wel even wat bellen. Hallo? Hallo?
But...
Hello?
Oh yeah, it's live. Okay, with the same URL. Okay, so I'll just make a quick tweet to say that we are ahead of schedule.
We hebben de stream gezet. Nee, maar hij is zo
Ja, ik wou zeggen dat...
Okay, before Bertrand starts his talk, Bertrand is just tweeting to tell people that we are ahead of schedule, which is very good, so we can move off to the beer earlier. I would ask you, Martin just told me, we are going to have a review form that we're going to send to you by email. So please, if you have any suggestions or if you just want to say how cool this all was, then please fill it in. Bertrand Bordage from NoRepeat.
Thank you. Before I start, I would like to show you a little video that will give you a hint of what this talk will be about. So, let's start it.
This is our first campaign, an adventure, 'cause we need your help to gain awesome features. Since we are plenty, it's like a party. Wagtail, woo! New form builder, inline panel, Wagtail, woo! Ginger to rewriting so it will scale. The drag and drop in Stringfield, Autocomplete results are yield. All of this we're going to merge in Wagtail, woo! Brand new stuff in model and in detail, woo! Content internationalization, woo! Way more than this one song could tell you, Wagtail, woo!
Okay, so thank you. That was a bit awkward, a bit crazy, but I wanted to do it for like a year or so. So, welcome to Wagtail's First Hatch, the first Kickstarter campaign for helping getting Wagtail to reach new heights. So, I'm Bertrand Bordage. I'm the director of a French company called NoRepeat, and I'm a member of the Wagtail core team for now a year. It started, in fact, right here last year for the previous Wagtail Space. And I'm the creator of various Django packages, and the most well-known is Django Cache Alert that helps your Django site run faster. So in the past 12 months, I worked on a lot of different topics in Wagtail, and the most used right now is the new admin preview that most of you probably saw. Before that, we had a slider that often ended up turning around into nothing and just froze. And so now we have a new admin preview thanks to me. And I also created the new PostgreSQL search backend that is now roughly widely used. A lot of people still use Elasticsearch, but there was a really quick adoption of this new backend. And I'm working on additional features. For example, we would like in the next version to have an interface when you delete your object that will list every mention of the object. So we already have that in Django, but in Wagtail it was a bit more complex because we wanted to also mention what was in rich text field and Stringfield. So I created a system that does that. And I'm working on some additional search features that will be in Wagtail in the upcoming year. So most noticeably, Autocomplete. And for those who know more about searching, boosting, and multi-language support, and a lot of additional features. So for this crowdfunding campaign, I have designed a few goals. One main goal that will tackle maybe what is the most blocking issue for newcomers to Wagtail is that the Stringfield is a bit ugly right now. We'll go more in detail about it. I designed 5 stretch goals that will tackle also very important issues that require a lot of time to tackle. And there are finally visionary goals that I created for more like ideas I had for all the time for Wagtail as a long-term goals. But I think we couldn't do them without a campaign, so this was the occasion to also put these visionary goals. So first, about the main goal, the new Stringfield. What I'm asking for is 8,000 euros to create a completely new interface for Stringfield that will be, of course, easier to use than right now. So it will feature lots of stuff we've been waiting for, so drag and drop, of course, so you can just click on a block and put it somewhere else. Collapsible blocks, it's very important because you often end up with a single block big like this. And also we will have additional controls and existing controls, everything in a single bar. I will show you just after this slide. And what will be nice with this is that I want to also apply all this new UI to the inline panel as well. Because for end users, inline panel and Stringfield are exactly the same kind of stuff. It allows them to add multiple things. It's just that internally it works differently, and for the user, the inline panel is just a more limited Stringfield. So it shouldn't look different from the Stringfield. So now, what should it look like? So you all know this kind of Stringfield. So for users, it's hard to justify that we designed an interface like this for them. I guess most of you had trouble with clients explaining how this is a good idea. And so for this particular site, by the way, there are lots of pages for just, in the end, just a small part of the page. So this is what I have in mind. It's a bit truncated on the right, but the idea is that you have one line per block, even if this block nests with other blocks. And by default, all the blocks will be collapsed this way, so that when you arrive on the page, you don't end up seeing hundreds of fields directly. You just see the overall structure of the Stringfield. Then, of course, you have little pluses in order to add new blocks anywhere you want. And if you take the inline like this, the old inline, it will look roughly the same, like this. The only difference is that since we are in an inline, we don't have different types of blocks. So you see on the right, there is nothing written, and there is no icon. If I compare it to Stringfield, here you see you have icons for the type of blocks. Here, this is always the same type of blocks, but never mind. And you have the name of the type on the right. So that's it. And when you click on something, first, you can drag, obviously. When you click on the bar of a block, you just drag it to its new position, like it should already be the case. And obviously, you can click just a single click on it without dragging. It will open the block. And then you have the detail. So as you can see, there's also some restyling of everything so that it's easier to have nested string fields. Because currently, when you nest blocks inside each other, what you end up is with a decreased width with every nesting level. And just after 3 levels, every field is just a tiny field with the label that gets wrapped into multiple lines. So to avoid that, one of the solutions was to put the label every time above the field. It seems natural this way. So here you can see there are multiple blocks inside this block, and you get exactly the same interface as for the previous level. It's just a little smaller in terms of width, but that's good enough for more than 10 levels of nested blocks, so that's OK. You can see the interface when you click on the plus. It's a suggestion. The color is not definitive. Obviously, like most of this, we will adjust some of the detail. But as you can see, when you add a new block, you don't end up with this big black block where you have each type of block, where most of the time you just end up with a placeholder icon. So it doesn't make sense. Every button is very big. So this way it's smaller. That way you can add 20 types of blocks. It will still be a small panel like this to add a new block. So way easier. So that's it for the main goal. And now for stretch goals. So the stretch goals are a mix of goals that huge companies waited for a long time. And this is the case for the first one that we will see. And other goals are general goals that everyone wants in Wagtail. So the first one is a new form builder. So I already worked on a new form builder based on Stringfield for a client project. So it's still in product. It's already in production, and it allows you to add your own types of fields, which is already good. But it also adds file support, which is pretty tricky because it's NoSQL. And you can also create step-by-step forms. So your form gets the user can design from the backend. Inside a Stringfield, the user can design a step-by-step form that will be spanned across 5, 10 steps. And it will generate only a single submission. There are also lots of additional features for this new form builder. There is more detail in the Kickstarter campaign. And one of the additional features that's quite interesting is an autosave feature that's already working. So why I am asking you for money to do this? Because simply it works, but it's not tested. There is no documentation. It's tied to a single project. It's not generic. The API is a bit ugly for now. So I need to do that again to improve it. And what we will do is next, we will integrate it in a third-party app. And after that, we just deprecate the old form builder and integrate the new one directly into Wagtail. So that's for the first stretch goal. The second one is making chooser panel generic. So that's pretty straightforward. Currently, you can only use page chooser panel document chooser panel, image chooser panel, and snippet chooser panel. But that's it. You can't use a chooser panel for your own model, except if it's a snippet. So if you're using model admin, you can't have a model panel. And it's really blocking for now because most of the time you just end up with a drop-down where you can select one of the many related objects you have, and sometimes you have hundreds or thousands of related objects. So this is a pretty important goal. The next goal, improve the whole styling, the whole admin styling. Well, it's more than styling. I want to improve lots of small details in the admin that we don't even see when we use Wagtail a lot. But there are lots of detail like this. This is pagination. It makes our clients lose a lot of time because there is only a next button. And when they want to go to the 10th page directly, it's a pain. They can't do it. They have to hit next a lot of time. And for the image view like this, it can take a lot of time because, as you may know, some of the thumbnails will be generated on the fly. So this can be pretty long. And obviously, we have to use a pagination like this. So I want to create a new pagination like this for everything. So both for images, for documents, for also model admin. And this is just one of the several items I want to work on this particular goal. So again, there is much more detail in the Kickstarter campaign. You will see also prototypes in this campaign, more screenshots. So the next goal is something that some of you may not have waited for, and some of you wait for like the start of Wagtail, is autocomplete everywhere in the admin. So when I say everywhere, it's relevant, of course. So the first item where we want to have autocomplete is obviously when we search. So when we search using the left-hand search, you can see here, or when you're directly on an image page, I mean the image index view, the document index view. These are places where we want autocomplete. But we also want to design an autocomplete panel that you can integrate inside every page, every edit form you create in Wagtail. So you could fetch a remote object, a foreign object, using an autocomplete field in a very easy way that would use the search engine. And this autocomplete will also work for text fields. So it will search across all the fields you already entered in the database. But that's up to you. Sometimes it's relevant to have this autocomplete panel. Sometimes it's not. But it's good to have it. And the last stretch goal is improving the model admin so it supports almost everything from the Django admin. It's a recurrent issue we get in the Wagtail repository. People ask for list editables for starters. So those of you who already know the Django admin know that we can edit multiple items at once using the admin, using an attribute called list editable. And there are lots of additional features in the Django admin that we absolutely don't have in Wagtail. One of these is actions. In Wagtail, in Django, we can select multiple objects. So for example, multiple pages or multiple images. And we can then select an action. The default action in Django is delete. So you can delete multiple objects at once. But you can design your own actions simply by writing Python without having to do anything else. So you can, for example, create a system to export data or anything. We could also publish multiple pages at once using a system like this. And there are lots of additional features I want to also include in model admin, roughly everything that's in Django. So this includes, for example, date hierarchy, if you know that. It's a way to go down a chronology. First by you have years, then you can select a year, then you get months, then in a month you get weeks, then you can get a specific date. It's a very efficient way to filter. So that's it for the stretch goal, but we don't want to stop here. We want to do visionary goals as well in order to make Wagtail fly a bit farther. So the first one we want to do is content internationalization. This is pretty obvious. It's one of the biggest lack in Wagtail currently. We have tutorials to guide you into writing a site that would work for multiple languages, but you're on your own on this kind of issue. And we want to do something out of the box where you just have to specify in your settings that you want this language, and then you will get the language you want in your site. Everything will be dealt automatically. So the kind of interface we would get is something like this. So a lot of you already coded a system like this where you have just a second tab for the other language. And it gets trickier when you have additional languages, because when you have too many languages, you can't obviously have as many tabs as you have languages. So what we want to do is create a drop-down like this, where you could select the additional languages. That's simple. That doesn't change the core of the way you edit pages. And that's what we want. We want the translated sites to be as easy as normal sites that just have additional tabs. And we worked on a very efficient way to do that in terms of database that will have absolutely no impact on the sites that do not use internationalization. So for everyone not using internationalization, everything will stay the same. Then the other item we have, we already discussed it yesterday for those who were in the meeting for the state of the art of Wagtail. It's making Wagtail more modular. So what we want to do is that different parts of Wagtail, we want them to be independently used so that you can just use Wagtail's admin without having to use the whole CMS stuff that's linked to it. So you wouldn't have to use the page model, but you could use the admin or the search features or even the embed features or the Stringfield just for a Django project. If you just need the Stringfield, you can just use the Stringfield. To give you more detail on this, the idea would be to get a new framework in addition to Django, so that Wagtail would be this new framework, and it would still be monolithic. We don't want to go to the way where every component would be a separate package, because it's a nightmare to maintain, in short. The next item is a tough one, rewriting the whole admin using Jinja 2. We strongly believe that Jinja 2 is the future of templating for Django. Because obviously it's more Pythonic for those who tried it. You just can use parentheses, which is awesome in the template language. We have to do less hacks when we use Jinja 2. And the most obvious reason why we want Jinja 2 is that it's between 2 and 10 times faster, depending on the templates. So that's awesome. And it's also easier to debug. In fact, when you have a traceback coming from your site, if you read the logs, you will actually see the template inside the logs, which is not what you get from Django right now, unless you're in development mode. The last item is in order to get a better base for Wagtail, we want to replace the library we are currently using, which is called Django Treebird. This is a library that does all the tree structures in Wagtail. So that's what we use to, for example, request that we want all the descendants of a given page. But the problem with these libraries are multiple problems. First of all, we have data safety issues in some cases, we can break the tree, and we have pages that end up being in the wrong place, which is really critical, especially in a very big site. And I designed a new software called Django Tree that does everything in the database directly. So we ensure, using this library, that the tree structure cannot be broken. Unless you specifically want it to broke, we still give the API for users to break a tree if they want. But by default, the tree will never break. You will have better performance, especially when using import scripts. When you want to import thousands of pages, it's way, 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 way faster. There is less code, and in general, it's better tested than the current state of Django Treebird, sorry. Because Django Treebird, for example, handles transaction badly. So if a transaction gets reverted, the tree breaks. So every time you get a Django error while someone is saving a new page, it breaks the tree. So we want to have really a really good start for Wagtail to reach new heights. So that was the last goal we would like to achieve. Now, just to give some detail, some concrete detail of what this campaign will fix exactly, I started making out a list of all the issues, all the important issues that would be fixed by this campaign. So this is not everything, but this is the most important issues. Just to give you an idea, I didn't expect you to read it right now, but you can see it later. So now, why are we making a crowdfunding campaign? Since until now, we've all done everything for free. But the reason why is that we want to do a lot more work on Wagtail, but we simply can't afford it. And last year, for example, we at No Repeat, we did almost 200 hours on Wagtail. And we really want to do more. Ideally, we would like to be the company that builds a lot of hardcore stuff in Wagtail. But we can't do more, simply because otherwise we would run out of business. So we need your help in order to focus on Wagtail for the 2 following years. And that will help us to deal with the hard issues. For example, the Stringfield, we discussed the Stringfield issues for years. Now, since we launched the Stringfield, we wanted it to be better, to have a better UI. We did a lot of work. There were lots of attempts of pull requests that just roughly were left abandoned because we don't have time anymore. We don't have enough time to work on something as big as rebuilding the whole Stringfield UI. And for those who are not in the core team, you may not know, but most of our work in the core team is focusing on just small issues, bugs mainly, and just improving, polishing the software. But we mostly polish what we already have, and we have to wait for someone to decide to take a big decision each time we want a new feature. So for example, we have the new Draftail editor. It took between 1 and 2 years to build, and it was a lot of investment. And if we want Wagtail to still keep having a really nice pace of really huge improvements, we need your help for that. So by helping me and helping No Repeat and helping Wagtail with this campaign, you could help me do 3 times more work in the 2 upcoming years in Wagtail. So about reward and calendar, there's of course the more detailed version in the campaign. But for starters, everyone will get, even if you give almost nothing, you will be promoted on the Wagtail site, in the Wagtail source, on the Wagtail and the No Repeat site as well. And obviously, sponsors will have more visibility with a huge logo at the top of the page. There are also additional rewards for sponsors. They can get remote consulting from No Repeat in any level of expertise, in any topic of expertise you want. So obviously, you have the full detail in the Kickstarter campaign. Now, about the calendar, the main goal, I think we could finish it, maybe not completely merge it, but at least finish the pull request and start reviewing in August this year. So this would get us the new Stringfield and inline panel interface for the end of the year, which would be cool. And for other goals, it would be up to 2 years to do everything. So now we count on you. If you could share this campaign using these two hashtags. And now this is the important part where we have to hope that the Kickstarter launch will work. I never tried it, so. Is it loading? Yeah, it's loading. Okay, now I will have, okay. So this is in French, but this is roughly a nuclear button. When I click on it, oh no, there's something else after that. Okay. Yeah. Launch the project. Ah, I have to check this.
It says you're selling your soul, right?
Okay, it's working well. It doesn't even load. Okay, so debugging. What's happening? There's no request. How is this built? Sorry, Kickstarter, but. Sorry, Tom? Yeah, well. I will reload and hope it works. Yeah, again. Yeah, I check. Oh, something's really loading now. Yeah, the project is there. So I made a short URL, shorter. I think it should work, but obviously I didn't test it against the real campaign. Yeah, it works. Okay, so if you could please share this this URL using these hashtags on Twitter, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertrand. Yeah, it was a bit longer, but we were running ahead of schedule. So, and this is an interesting topic. So, some questions? Yes. You, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
Is this managed from the core team or just from your company?
It's an initiative from my company, but with the support of the core team and the approval of the core team, obviously. So it's run by my company. My company wears the responsibility for the campaign. It's simply because we don't have a Wagtail Foundation now, so we don't have a legal entity to support something like that. So it has to be one of the companies using Wagtail for now. In the future, if you do another campaign, maybe we would have a foundation, but right now it's us.
Okay, and like all software development projects, managing time and money, you ask for 8,000 euros.
Yeah.
And if it's not finished?
If the goal is not reached?
Yeah, the money is up and the goal is not reached.
So the money goal is reached, but you haven't produced software that's complete yet. You ran away with the money.
Yeah, well, you ran away.
Well, I mentioned that. In fact, there's a part in the Kickstarter campaign you have to feel about the risks of the campaign, and that was one of the risks I talked about. And what I want to do is, obviously, we want to do all this no matter what the campaign does. But if the campaign doesn't work, we would have to. It would take us roughly 3 times more time to do it. So we still want to do it benevolently. It will just take more time if we go if we exceed the budget we have in mind. It will just take more time, but we will still do it as we always did in open source. When we start working on something, we finish it in my company. So,
thank you.
I think the question was, what happens if you raise the money but you don't deliver the work?
Yeah. Well, from a responsibility point of view, it's up to Kickstarter that has to reimburse people in case the goal there is no delivery. So it's a third party that deals with it. So you don't just have to take our word for it.
Okay.
Are all projects, will they be merged, or is there a possibility that you finish the project and the Wagtail core team says, nah, it's not that Matthew says, hey, can go.
That's funny you say this, because this is one also of the risks I added to the list of risks. And what we want to do, if ever there is a community skepticism faced to one of the stuff we do, we want to do it at a third-party app, and then we wait until there is a consensus, and we improve that third-party app, and then we include it in Wagtail. So it will still be usable, even though ideally, yeah, we want everything to get into core.
Okay.
What happens if you raise all the money and you have your 2-year schedule, but somebody contributes one of the features before you get to it?
Yeah, that's that's tricky, in fact. And what I plan to do, for starters, is just to mention the campaign in all the issues we want to deal with. So when the campaign, in 1 month, when the campaign will be finished, I will, depending on how well it goes, I will update all the tickets that are related so that everyone at least knows that someone will be working on it. So that should prevent that kind of situation. And if someone really wants to do something and contributes and creates a pull request before I can start working on it, well, I will just work on something else, and I will make an update to the Kickstarter campaign to just ask in a poll, what would you like me to do instead of this, because it was already done.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay.
When you raise the money and you reach a few or all of the goals, is the idea that you will be doing all the work, or will you be hiring a developer for it for full time, for example? Or what's the approach for that?
In fact, the idea was more that I do it because I'm the one that clear the schedule in order to do it. But that's actually a good question, because I planned in all these budgets, I planned for each goal a 3 hours review time, because obviously if I just deliver a lot of pull requests and nobody reviews them, it's a problem. So we want to have a correct review time by an independent developer. But yeah, most of the work will be done by me.
I saw Thibault.
Thank you. This is very interesting, and it's the first campaign that does this for Wagtail, so good to try it. Jinja 2. I would love to see Jinja 2 make its way to Wagtail. As a front-end developer, it would make my life much easier. But do you know if there are plans for other Django-related projects, or for Django itself to switch to another templating language?
Not that I know of. It's in fact a tricky issue, but to me it's like the natural way of things. I think Django should deprecate its own language, because in fact its code base is bigger than Jinja 2. It's less stable in some ways, and it would ease Wagtail to Django to just remove this language and slowly deprecate it and remove it. So it feels natural now, but there are certainly no decision about that right now.
Yeah, one more question related to the question Marco asked you. Why not make it a community project? Why not ask for $8,000 or euros and say, I will organize 10 sprints with 10 people, and the equal amount of hours is spent within those 10 sprints. We just made over 200 hours in the last 3 days.
Well, it's mostly, that's an interesting topic, and if some of you want to work on one of these, there's absolutely no problem for me to just pay this person to do it, if the person can do it, obviously. But for me, it's really a cost issue, because it seems easier to me to have just one person that really knows well all Wagtail internals to work on it. It's more efficient than having multiple developers that didn't work a lot together. That's trickier, and that also adds some human problems and legal problems, because otherwise, if I just ask for 10 different companies to develop all these features, the problem is that I can just say it's not my fault if the feature didn't make it. It's this company. Or if all is done by my company, it's only my company that wears the responsibility for this. So I think for many reasons it's easier, but I'm still open to the other possibility. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for this.
Thank you.
I think it's your turn right now, right?
Sorry.
There's still time to put up a lightning talk if you want to. We have, I think, 7 lightning talks now. First one are the guys from Fix. Still here. Tom Dyson, also from Torchbox. Oh, is your microphone ready?
Not yet. No.
Sorry? Oh, yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to say a couple of things before I start my talk. And the first is, just in response to Bertrand's talk then, I really welcome this from Bertrand, and he's been discussing it with me and the rest of the core team for a while, and he's been very careful about the way he's put it together, and I think you can see how much work he's put into doing this. I feel it's, talking about money is quite an uncomfortable topic in open source, and I know that all of you here are contributing to open source already in personal ways and through your businesses. And I think for all of us, 100,000 euros is a lot of money. And I think the expectation isn't that we as individuals should deplete our savings and make this happen. But at the same time, 100,000 euros isn't a lot of money for for a medium to large company. And you may know that content management systems like Adobe Experience Manager, they'll charge about 100,000 euros for a year's license. So to transform a product like this that's being used all over the world and by some of the world's biggest brands, it's probably not an unreasonable request. And I hope there's a way that together we can help accelerate the development of this. The second thing I wanted to say was, in case I don't have an opportunity again, was to thank 4 Digits for really putting on an amazing 3 days. And I remember very clearly the first time when I came here last year, Arrived on the train, walked down the street, and just about 100 meters away, I saw the Wagtail sign outside. And it was, even then, it was amazing for me that, that this piece of software that we built, Matthew and I and a few others at Torchbox, 3 years later, there was the logo was on a sign in a street in a town that I hadn't heard of in the Netherlands. And last year was a fantastic 3 days. And this year it's like bigger and better. And it's amazing to me. We have people from 4 continents, from India, from Africa, from California, and from across Europe. And 4Digits have just done an incredible job of looking after us all, especially those of us who've been here all 3 days. They're amazing hosts. We had a great party last night, music. And I think for any of you who are thinking of putting on a sprint, please try not to feel intimidated by the bar that 4Digits have set. And don't feel that you have to match it, because we certainly wouldn't do that. So thank you very much, everyone from 4Digits. So I'm going to give my talk now. I changed the title of this. In fact, I changed the talk itself. I was going to talk about content intelligence, which is a bit of a jargony term. But the idea was about ways that we can use these cheap or free machine learning tools to help hook together bits of content and do image analysis and look at sentiment analysis. And I've got some cool demos to do around that. And we're using some of this in the real world too. But I decided to change my talk because there was a theme that's been coming up a lot in the time that we've been here. And some of it relates a bit to what Lisa was saying earlier in her talk about focusing on the users of our sites. And I realize this is a bit of an ambiguous title. I don't mean the word problem, I mean the word problem. And I think I'll skip the introduction, I sort of said that earlier. This, I think, is what we imagine, at least this is what I have often imagined is what happens when this beautiful software we create. So the author, she's got this wonderful content to make, and she opens up Wagtail, types it all in, enjoys using Stringfield, despite the minor inadequacies, and hits submit. Editor gets the notification, reviews it, publishes on Wagtail, and everybody's happy. That's kind of how we've designed Wagtail to work, and indeed, it does work like that in some cases. But actually, I think this is what really happens. So you might have seen some file names like this. Final, this is really final, .doc. And a typical workflow that I've heard about a few times in the last couple of days, and that, in fact, I've experienced myself, is that the author doesn't start off in Wagtail. She starts off in Word. And when she's done, she saves it in an attachment, she emails it to someone. They might not have the right version of Word, but they can probably open it in Pages, and they lose some of the formatting. And they kind of make a couple of comments. Maybe they do track changes, but track changes don't really work when you save it back into the Word format. Email it back to the author, maybe put a -reviewed in the file name. Then the author gets it back, makes the changes, and copy and paste them into Wagtail, and you get all the extra formatting until Thibaut is fixed now with the pasting from Word into Wagtail. And it gets published and it goes live, and then the boss sees the live site and says, no, that's wrong, we can't have that. Emails furiously the author, who gets some changes, and so the cycle continues. And it strikes me that over the years, I've spent quite a lot of time dealing with this problem of people pasting stuff into Word. This is something I built 10 years ago, 2008, and it was just after Google App Engine was launched, and I wanted to do a demo of it. And this was the simplest possible app that you pasted in from Word, and it stripped out all the crap, and then you copied and pasted it back into your website. And actually, it turned out that this thing got massive traffic, and it was at wordoff.org, and hundreds of people use it all the time. Because, I reckon in this industry, trillions of hours have been spent pasting copy from Word, and then cursing, and then fixing it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the notification when my domain expired, so and then I could never retrieve it. So this is dead now. But the word problem continues, And it exacerbates. And this is another workflow, and this is something that I've probably got this slightly wrong, but this is a kind of workflow that I've heard about on the NHS. Most of you might be aware that the UK National Health System has adopted Wagtail for its main website. Some of our friends here have been very involved in this. This is it's one of the highest profile sites in the UK. Massive traffic. It's the first site that anyone in the UK goes to if they've got some funny mark that they're worried about, or they're coughing or something. It's a really, really important website. But the workflow for this is, in this case, it is authored in Wagtail. And I think the Wagtail preview and moderation system is used. But then, because if you're writing about diabetes, it's pretty important that you don't make a mistake in this text that's going to be read by millions of people and that people are going to make decisions about. So then it has to be sent to a medical expert. And the medical expert is not going to have a Wagtail account. So sometimes it's like printed off, or it's a kind of, they make a PDF of the web page and then they send that as an attachment, and the doctor looks at it and suggests some changes just by email, and then the changes are made in Wagtail. And then, you know, this is a painful process, but this is a real life process. This is what's happening at the moment. I think there are there are two things we could do. We could just say users are stupid. Users, you know, like emailing Word documents around is crazy, and if you're going to do that, then bad luck. But I think what we should be doing is thinking about how we can adapt to this reality, to the situation that all these authors find themselves in. And I think there's two approaches we can take. One is at the content entry part, and this is making Wagtail better for writers. So you don't want to start in just a text document or Word or Google Docs or Dropbox paper, because Wagtail offers such a nice authoring experience that it's a place that you want to start. And I think the work that has happened in Wagtail 2.0 with the Draftail stuff, which is really mainly down to Thibaut's efforts, is a massive step forward for this. And as Thibaut demonstrated, there's quite a lot that we can do to continue making this a really beautiful experience for writers. So that's part one, and I'm not going to address that now because it's underway, and I think, you know, we can already see where that's going to go. But part two of the solution, I think, is trying to address the situation that happens after the initial content has been authored, and in particular, trying to make it easier for the doctor or the boss or whoever it is who doesn't, you know, hasn't been trained in Wagtail to give feedback. And my first idea about this came through looking at this site. So this is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's one of the US government agencies. And this is a massive open source project, big team. And their site's running on Wagtail. And it's all on GitHub. And in fact, if you're interested in how to run and build a really large Wagtail site, I recommend tracking this project, and the way they manage it is really interesting. They've got, you know, they're doing a fantastic job. I think the team is almost entirely remote, and in fact, two of the core developers from CFPB are on the Wagtail core team. They would have loved to be in here, but sadly, because they work for the US government, they couldn't come here unless they got a diplomatic visa. These CFPB have addressed this problem using a plugin that they have open sourced called Wagtail Sharing. And Wagtail Sharing is like a two-line install, and what it enables is the ability for people outside Wagtail, so people without necessarily a Wagtail account, to see the draft versions of your content. And it's up to you as implementers to protect that, so you could do it. Typically, you would have it on a subdomain that's firewalled, or you could put your own password protection in front of it, or you know, maybe you require a VPN or something to access this version, which would be on a different port or something. It's really simple to do that, but that part's left up to you. But behind the scenes, it's pretty flexible about how it handles this sharing. And when I saw it, I submitted an issue to make a request so that it would be possible for them to create a hook to change the content that's being previewed. And that was in order that I could insert a little bit of annotation software. Now, I had this video ready in case I couldn't get it working locally, but I'm going to take a risk and try running it locally instead. Okay. There's something, you can't quite see the edges, but hopefully that won't matter too much. So as a demo for this, I've made a new Wagtail site with a single page. And let me just edit it. This is a page about diabetes. This is following on from the NHS theme, a title and a date and a summary, and then simple rich text fields with headings and paragraphs. And I could preview this. Here's the content. You can see I haven't published this page yet. It's, can you see that in the corner? Just about. No, you can't quite. But it's a status draft. It hasn't been published yet. So as it stands in a normal Wagtail installation, it would be tricky for me to share this draft version. It would be impossible for me to share this draft version with somebody who didn't already have a Wagtail account. But because I've installed the Wagtail sharing plugin, I get this new option, View Sharing Link. And if I just copy that link here, just to do a proper demo, and I'll do a new incognito tab, paste this in. Actually, I didn't want to do the home page. I want to get the sharing link for the diabetes page. I'm going to copy that link for the diabetes page. Paste that in. And so that's the first thing that, you can see that the URL is a bit different. This is sharing.localhost. This would be the protected one. And the other thing that you can't see, annoyingly, I'm going to take this out of full screen mode. Is that there's a little banner at the top to indicate that you're on the sharing site. And so this is where the CFBB tool stops. So this is now available for other people to look at. But then the reason I asked for this new feature was so that I could inject this annotation software. And it turns out there's quite a few of these libraries, you might have seen them around, that allow you to annotate any web page. And there are some commercial hosted ones. But the one I like the look of is something called Hypothesis, hypothesis.is, and which is open source. It's actually it's run by a non-profit foundation. They're chiefly interested in freedom of the press, and they've got a kind of big focus on fake news. And they're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to comment on public content. So this library has now been loaded. It's not obvious yet, but now I'm imagining that I'm a medical expert. I've been sent this content to review. I haven't had to log into Wagtail, and I'm reading that they're saying approximately 10% of all diabetes. Because I'm a diabetes expert, I know that's not quite right, so I'm going to quit that, and this tab comes up, and I'm going to say, actually, it's now 12%, and I'm going to give it a tag of fact check, and post that, and now that's marked as a comment, and then I'm going to find something else. I'm going to tag that as a splat wrong. Spelling. So just showing a couple of examples of the ways that you can use the software. So this is pretty familiar to people who use Google Docs, for example, or paper comments. And then with this open source project, Hypothesis, they have a pretty rich API that means that you host this yourself to start off with. At the moment, I've just logged into the public one, and handle your own authentication in front of it if you like, but also have triggers for pushing off. So at this point, we will probably want to notify the author of the content to say, you've now got 2 comments that need resolution. One thing that I think is missing in here is we don't have, like you do in Google Docs, this concept of resolution. So really you want to be able to mark that something's an issue and that until it's been resolved, it can't go live. Let's go back to my presentation. So I feel like already with this, just hooking into this simple plugin and making some small changes and using the Hypothesis work, it gets us perhaps quite a long way. And I can imagine, giving this demonstration to our colleagues at the NHS and hoping that this might move it on quite a long way. But nevertheless, there's more things that we can do to improve this. The first, I think, is around authentication. So finding a clever way of making it that yeah, just allowing a more sort of centralized authentication for being able to give comments, perhaps. The second one is the one I mentioned already around comment notification. So what happens when you submit a comment? Does it send an email or does it send a Slack message? And how do we handle that within Wagtail? Also, this idea about issue resolution. So I think I'd like to find a way of extending hypothesis or possibly coming up with an alternative that means that you can have you can define that a comment needs to be resolved. And the last thing I think that would be nice would be to hook this in better with to create a page audit log in Wagtail. So you probably know we already have revisions in Wagtail. Already those revisions are pretty minimal, and I think it'd be nice to have a bit more metadata around revisions. So we could say, you could maybe give a title or a summary for the reason you've given a revision. But I think something like this could hook into that as well. So we have just a clear audit trail that shows about why an author made a decision, why someone made a comment on it, and so on. That's it. If any of you think this is useful or would like to help push ahead with this, I think it's a really interesting part of Wagtail. And I think just to get back to my initial point about this, I think that if we don't take the step of just saying that users who email word around are stupid, and we think about how we can solve this problem, then I think this can be a way that actually really distinguishes Wagtail, because all of the other content management systems I know fall into the same trap. And I think if we can if we can just be more empathetic and find real-world solutions to this issue, then I think it can really put Wagtail in a different space and make it useful to a much bigger audience. Thank you very much.
Yes, questions? Okay, you were very clear. Thank you. The last full-size time slot is for Daniela. So after this next talk, we're going to take a small break. Thank you. Right now, live talks are between 1 and 7 minutes.
First things first.
It should take us about 3/4 of an hour, I'm guessing. There's still room, so if you want.
Here you go. Got an inner pocket.
Yeah, let's. I'll put it in here maybe. Yes, thank you. And this place. Thanks. Okay. Am I ready to go? Yes, you are. Good. I'm back again to talk to you about Wagtail on the Divio cloud. I talked a little bit about this last year, so this is an update on Wagtail on Divio cloud, or as we say in Netherlands, Quickzatje in de Valk, for 2018. And I mentioned that I was doing this to a friend of mine he's a naturalist. He works at the Naturalis Center in Leiden, and he's very interested in birds. And he said, that doesn't even make sense. The wagtail's a low-flying bird. What's a wagtail going to be doing flying in a cloud? This has no connection with reality and seems quite ignorant about the most basic facts about these species. And he wanted to know what I actually knew about wagtails. Said, what sort of conference is this where you talk about wagtails in clouds? So I didn't really have anything to say about that. You know, he was concerned with realism. But anyway, it turns out that Kardé his professional expertise is in dragonflies, and birds are just his hobby. So I informed him that as I was the one with an actual professional interest in wagtails, that I wasn't prepared to take lectures from him on this occasion. So enough about Kardé. I'm Daniele. I think most of you know me. I work at Divio. We're a Swiss Django company. I'm one of the Django core development team. I'm a board member of the Django Software Foundation, and some contact details. And this is my favorite picture, so Python software. Okay. So some of you, I'll very briefly introduce DVO Cloud to you, since some of you might not be so familiar with it. DVO used to be a Django agency, but we are no longer. We are a Django software company providing software and services, hosting and development services for Django and Python developers. We do this using Docker, and there are three things that we try to hit for our users. One is to offer a development system with tools and workflow that improve the life of developers. We have a deployment system with end-to-end wiring, so you might be familiar with things like Heroku, for example. Well, we're competing with Heroku, but what we offer is something that's wired up all the way from the database to the domains for the developer. And we provide site reliability, a managed cloud, so the basic idea is that, you sleep and we'll do the driving, so, which is pretty good when you actually want to sleep. And I put them in that order, but really maybe I should put them in this order, with site reliability first, because that's what actually gets people in, and it's much harder to explain the value of the development tools until you've actually used them, especially because people are slightly reluctant to be informed that they might now need to learn to use some slightly new tools. But that first one is actually why a lot of people are coming. And what happens is that they come for the undisturbed nights and uninterrupted children's birthday parties, but then they stay for the development tools once they get the hang of them. And then, of course, as I said, there's this, in the middle, we have this, our end-to-end wiring, which means that developers can get on with the business of developing and not worry about all the other stuff that is ancillary to it. So that end-to-end wiring is what makes us different from services like Heroku, for example. And a key part of it is what we call our add-on system. So don't think of it like WordPress plugins or anything like that. It is our own cloud packaging system so that we can wrap up other reusable applications for reuse in the projects that people use. It allows them to be deployed in projects with automated application configuration. So for example, our Wagtail add-on configures itself. It puts all the settings and middleware in the right place and sets up other things that are needed in the settings and so on. It doesn't make so much sense until you actually get your hands on it, but it has some important implications. One is that it puts web applications very quickly into the hands of people who are not developers. So, for example, we get a lot of, like WordPress.com does, we get a lot of people arriving on our site, and they're just small site owners. They want to get a small website up. And they can do all of that without being developers on our systems. They can deploy not just a website or a Django application, but a running web content management system. And then very easily, with a very minimum of technical skills, do things like work on templates and HTML and CSS and so on. So they get very easily get started with that. From a business point of view, more significant is that we get people like corporate web managers landing there and seeing this. So these are people who are also not necessarily technical as developers, but they know what kind of tool their users are going to want. And our add-on system makes it very easy for us to show them something without their having to go to a developer to get something set up. So that's very valuable at bringing people onto our platform and onto the applications, such as, actually, in our case, it's mainly Django CMS, because we're the company behind Django CMS, but also to applications such as Wagtail that we can support out of the box like that. Then for the developer, it streamlines development very much and allows us to do some other interesting things, which I'll show you at the end of this. So for us, why Wagtail? Well, I've got a particular soft spot for Wagtail because it was at the first conference I organized in Cardiff just over 4 years ago that Matt publicly introduced. I think that was the very first time it was publicly introduced. Yeah, so it was launched at Django Weekend Cardiff in 2018. So I've had a very soft spot for the Wagtail project since then. It's been really nice to see how it's growing and developing. So I kind of taken it upon myself to be a kind of Wagtail champion inside DVO. And for us, as a soft spots aside, there is this international growing community of Wagtail users and developers, and we would like to have their business. So for us, it makes a lot of sense to support Wagtail as best as we can. For those corporate web users that I was mentioning earlier, it's very important for us because many of them come to us because they're interested in the guarantees we can offer around uptimes and things like that for a web CMS. Maybe they want Django, but they don't necessarily know exactly what they want in Django. They just want a Django CMS. And sometimes it's not even specifically Django that they want, but they're looking at various options that can give them certain guarantees. And the more options we have for these users, the better. So at the moment, we have a lot of experience offering them Django CMS and getting it, in some cases, customized to their particular needs. And we want to improve what we can do with Wagtail as well, so that when these users come looking, we can give them more options. And I think it's also really important for us to support a diversity of code on the platform, so that from a business point of view, we have more strings to our bow. On the other side, for Wagtail developers or users, why DVO Cloud? Well, the first one is, from a business point of view, we have a partnership program. As I mentioned, we no longer do agency work ourselves, and that's because we don't want to be in competition with our own customers, who are agencies. So we have a partnership program with a lot of different Django Python agencies signed up, and when a company comes to us and needs some custom work done, which sometimes is a small amount and sometimes it's a huge project, this gets passed to one of our DVO partners, and they're in all different parts of the world, in India, in South America, Europe, the USA. And we get a lot of requests in for quotes, for site migrations, or somebody's got an existing site on our platform and wants further development. So this goes to partner agencies, and we have technical support for them. The basic arrangement is that the agencies take care of the development work, and the site is hosted on our platform. I can tell you a little bit more about that afterwards, but I don't want to spend too much long on it. Other advantages, peace of mind. If you're a developer, you don't necessarily want to be responsible for keeping your clients' sites online around the clock, so you can go to bed at night. In the deployment, as I said, all the wiring is taken care of. Our development tools, they're fairly opinionated, but not opinionated like a racist uncle, but opinionated in a helpful, expert, agreeable kind of way. So they do work. It does take it's a little hump to get over, just to, as with any new tool, but it streamlines the process from working on your own machine to getting the applications actually running in production very well. And also, I think it will be good for the Wagtail community to have Wagtail presented to more users in a way that we can do quite well because of our position. We have a few, I think we have at least two, I know 4 Digits, is it okay for me to mention that 4 Digits uses DVO Cloud, and Torchbox uses DVO Cloud. They're developing a new project for an Oxford-based education charity. So that's that would be, I think, our biggest Wagtail project on the cloud that's being developed by Torchbox in Wagtail and is going to go live in its first phase quite soon. So we're really pleased about that, and we're hoping to get some more. I mentioned earlier that there are some, our internal technology, this add-on system allows us to do some quite clever things, and that we've got good ways of putting products like Django CMS or Wagtail in front of people. One is you can go to the site, you can launch register a free account, and then quickly deploy and configure a site. But we can do something even better than that because we have this demo system. So I set this up basically last night and this morning. And, oh, hang on, that's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to be a hyperlink. Let's just try that here. Let's go to that link. And this goes, it will open a URL on our site. Now, it says Django CMS all over it because, oh, of course it's not. It says Django CMS all over it because, sorry, I've got to work over my shoulder. Because it's what we use for our Django CMS demos, and I kind of hacked into it and finally got it working this morning. But this is the basic idea that we can give somebody a demo and click let's go, and then keep my fingers crossed because you never quite know what's going on. Let's just refresh that page. I think it was just loading. There you are. So there's the Wagtail Bakery demo running and launched in a few seconds. Now, we need to put some polish on it, and I'm going to have to take away that. I'm going to have to disable it after this because it's not really ready for use. But this demo will run, this one will run for 6 minutes, and then it will expire. We have access, if I can get up there, to the, oh dear. We can have access to all the admin of this project and do anything that you could do if you set up this yourself on your computer. But I think this is probably the fastest way that anybody in the world who thinks they might be interested in Wagtail can actually deploy a Wagtail site to try if they haven't already, if they're not already developers and have it on their own machine. So I think this has been hugely beneficial for us in the Django CMS world, and I think it could be very useful for Wagtail, its developers, and its community. And it's an example of what I mean about wanting to improve the way we support Wagtail on DV Cloud. So, I mean, you can go ahead and try that URL. Let me just find it again for you over here. Try it on your own machines. You might need to do a refresh. It's dvo.com/wagtail-demo. I can't remember how many demos I provisioned, so if you get a message saying they've run out, they've run out. But they expire after 6 minutes, and then they get refreshed. So that's it. Thank you very much. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've done. Go and visit our website, play with the demo, and come and talk to me as well. And thank you very much for Digits for putting this on. This is even better than last year, if that's possible. It's been a lovely few days. Thanks. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Tom.
Not a question, but just to thank Daniela for putting this together. I think it's actually really important for us to have this, and there hasn't been so far an easy way to demonstrate Wagtail to people. We built this bakery demo site in the sprint in Reykjavik last year in a couple of days, and it's not perfect, but it was much better than what we had before, and I think already it's a pretty good representation of what you can do in Wagtail. But so far, in order for people to see it, then they've had to be skillful enough to start their own Heroku account or something, and this is a huge step forward, I think. Being able to do it in a few seconds is really helpful. Thank you very much.
But this is, I should say, this is only the demo that will expire after 6 minutes, but you can go to our control panel and with a few clicks launch a working Wagtail site that then you can start working on. So, but this will get people in through the front door. It's pretty easy. I mentioned our add-on system, which is our kind of an add-on is basically a wrapper around a reusable package. So I did that for Wagtail Puput last year. I think the hideously named Wagalytics is incorporated in there as well. And it's very easy. And as you say, the tedious part is wiring these things into a project. And that's what our system can do for the user. So we can, I don't know how much time I have to go on talking, so I don't want to take up too much time. But in our control panel, you can select add-ons and choose the versions that you want and install them in a project and deploy. And they will all be set up and ready to go in a project that you can then pull down with Git and work on locally. So we would love to have more Wagtail, what do you call Wagtail packages that are part of the ecosystem? Wagtail add-ons, plugins, or whatever. We would love to have more of them on the DVO cloud, but it does need the maintainers of those packages to help us do that little bit of extra work, because it's just too much for us to maintain on our own. As we get more and more users, of course, we'll have much more motivation to do that, because it's very valuable in our Django CMS ecosystem that we have a lot of functionality, rich functionality available to users who aren't developers that they can install via the control panel. So, but it's not difficult, and I'm happy to look at it with you.
Thanks for the answer, and sorry for the interruption. We were just changing batteries on the mic. Any other questions? No? In that case, we can go down for a coffee, and we will start with the lightning talks in 20 minutes. So, see you soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.